what have you been doing since you've retired?
What have I been doing since I retired? Well, thanks, Emma. Actually, it never actually felt like I retired. That's how much I've been doing. When in tennis, it's interesting because you always kind of work backwards from goals, right? You have all these objectives physically, and and obviously, from an accomplishment standpoint, and then you build yourself up physically and mentally, and then boom, the tournament ends. But like when I retired, I kind of had this shift of mind. I kind of started thinking to myself, you know what? Now I'm not going to work backwards from anything. I'm going to work forwards towards things. Not knowing where I'm even going to get led. So it's a difference of sort of swimming laps in a swimming pool, if you will, versus heading out in the Pacific Ocean and not knowing if you're going to end up in Hawaii or Tahiti or what have you. So when I retired, I started with wanting to make sense of my life by putting my whirlwind of a tennis career and tennis childhood into literary form by writing my book Open. It's an autobiography I spent about 2.5 years on. Meanwhile, I already had a foundation in education. I built a K through 12 public charter school in the most economically challenged area of Las Vegas, which is the fifth largest school district in America. They graduate 50th in the United States for kids we put in college. So I really was affecting those that needed it the most. I got kind of frustrated that I had 1,200 kids in the school and had 3,000 on the waiting list. So recognizing that I wasn't an operator and I wasn't an educator, I had to kind of come to terms with what I was, which was this facilitator. And I started to realize I was stealing all these best practices from so many great charter school operators, the top in class ones, not 85% of them, but the top 15%. And so I started to think of ways I could help them expand their footprint and help facilitate growth for them. And so I quickly realized that philanthropy itself wasn't scalable, although important. It was not as scalable as I needed it to be or wanted it to be. I was also pretty tired of waiting for the government to fix these daunting societal issues. So I did what a reasonable person would do, and I went to the private sector and I put together a really great business model. It's an infrastructure fund focused on building best-in-class charter schools for the best-in-class charter school operators across the country. And then through the tax exempt, we kind of finance them out at the back end through a tax exempt, financing that helps them purchase the facility back. So all of a sudden they have their school on day one with all their kids and well, I'm not playing landlord in their life. And it's kind of a unique model that allows the great educators to expand their footprint in a very sustainable way. And anyhow, so in the last 10 years of that, we've deployed over about $1.5 billion and built 120 schools across the country, which has been amazing, and that continues to grow. And then additionally, I recognize that all these schools that have great leaders and great operators still have the same source spot, which is early childhood literacy and secondhand English language learning. So I put together a ed tech platform that is really doing well right now that uses our latest neuroscience that we have out of Stanford and UCSF and many other great neuroscience studies across the whole country. And what I recognized and realized is we actually have the capability of knowing how every individual's child's or person's brain actually works, and that they all work differently. And we can actually use technology to help in real time fill in the gaps of where kids struggle to learn to read, because reading wasn't something we were really born to do. We were born to kind of hunt and communicate, but not necessarily read. So I've taken this neuroscience, I put it into a social platform, ed tech platform that is potentially reaching millions now of kids across the United States and across India as well, and China too. So I've been a busy boy, I guess is the best way to say it.
How do you feel about Nike making apparel inspired by you?
Well, it was a very special feeling, going back up to Beaverton and meeting with the old usual suspects, all my friends from the past, and And then to see the apparel alive and kind of living today, 30 years later is pretty exciting, man. I guess if you live to be old enough, maybe even the mullet's going to come back. Maybe the haircut might even come back. But pretty overwhelming to see it on TV. I mean, unfortunate year that we've all had to live through, but not having fans out there, in the sporting arenas was disappointing. But sitting and watching on my television and getting to see tennis being played and I thought Shapovalov wore it pretty. I thought he really. He might have wore it better than I did. I'm not so. He looked sharp.
What would you have, or what have you learned from now that you would give yourself advice about yourself 20 years ago?
Ooh, 20 years? That means I'm 30. I would say I would first congratulate myself for making a great decision on the partner I chose for my life, which is my beautiful wife. But no, I think you learn a lot as you get older. It's accumulative. You start to learn how to just be more receptive to moments in your life, whether they be good or difficult. I think understanding that passage of time and it gives you a lot of strength if things aren't going so well, and it also gives you a lot of joy when you take stock in what's actually happening around you. So I probably would have just tell myself to slow down a little bit and then really take in these moments because they're fleeting and not because tennis is going to be over soon. I mean, everything's going to be over soon, right? Everything we're living and experiencing. So I think that is probably my biggest takeaway. As you get older in life, you start to realize how valuable people are and how valuable time is, and how valuable moments and connections are.
Okay. What motivates you in your life currently?
What motivates me in my life currently, I have to say, I've always been addicted to problem solving. For some reason, I think because that's what tennis really is. You don't have to. I've always said, you don't have to be good at tennis. You have to be better than one person, right? So what does that mean? That means you got to figure it out, and you don't have to be special. You don't have to do anything great. You can solve problems a lot of different ways, and so that's kind of bled over to my personal life, to my foundational life, to my business life. So I think I'm motivated by problem solving. It seems over the last 15 years, I've been taking very societal, daunting societal issues and trying to figure out comprehensive, sustainable, scalable solutions for them. That's number one. I would say that motivates me. And then I think connection. I think that's something that's always been very important to my journey. Is that along the way, I get to meet special people and share what I've been through and listen and take in what they've been through. And it's inspiring. I just kind of wake up every day and just say, I can't wait what's in store for me from a connection standpoint, because you never know when I get to meet 3 special people like you. So I'm taking it in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What current rule would you like to change in tennis?
Current rule would I like to change in tennis? Oof. That's a good question. I would say first and foremost, and they're doing it slowly. I've always said by 6-all in the 5th set, if you don't know who's going to win the match, flip a coin. because whoever loses won't deserve it. And there are no losers, when you get to that stage. So we need tiebreakers, and they have them now. We've seen it at Wimbledon. That I was glad to see that. We still have one slam left where they don't, which is, I guess, the French. So I'd like to see just tiebreakers at 6-all in the 5th, and you've been out there for 5 hours. That's plenty enough time to figure it out that anything can happen. So let's just let's just bring an end to this and carry on. I also think there, a little bit more flexibility in the players' ability to express themselves. I think we've gotten a little too concerned with, too sensitive to communications. Let's just call it that. I mean, when we back in the days with Connors or McEnroe or myself, I mean, you could say we were definitely not mature at times and not handling ourselves ideally, but it sure seemed to, allow the crowd to engage. And so I'd like to see if some rain's kind of taken off the players' ability to, I don't know, maybe get a little irritated every now and then. I mean, definitely don't be hitting balls at people. That's where I draw the line. If you're starting to hurt people, that's a problem. But if you're hurting yourself, like breaking your racket over your own head, then I'd let that slide.
Alrighty. Another question: who would you like to have played in your prime, or who would you like to play if you were both in your prime?
Oh wow, definitely not Roger. Definitely not Rafa. Definitely not Novak, because then I would be completely exposed for the non-athlete that I am. So I say definitely not them. I would probably have to go historical, just because I grew up idolizing like Borg, for example, and I always just appreciated the way he went about his work and his craft. I think that'd probably be my answer. I'd probably, or even I can even get more kind of historical on you and kind of say I'd love to play somebody that, arguably you still can argue the greatest of all time, Rod Laver. When you understand the limitations of rackets and balls and court surfaces and you just get a chance to just understand what they're doing, so intimately. That'd be a fascinating intellectual process to go through for me as a tennis player. There's not too many things I don't know about tennis, but what I don't know is what it would feel like to play against the evolution of our game.
Okay, this question's kind of like a fun question. Snickers or Milky Way?
Oh, I'm like, can I choose French fries instead? Because I tell you, my wife is a sweet tooth and a half, and I'm like a total grease person. Like if you ask me my last meal, and if I had to choose my last meal, it'd probably be like half of everything from every fast food joint in the country.
My last question is: do you think you'll ever coach again?
Yes, I do. I mean, coaching for me it's much less about, being out there and being seen and, and being, I don't know, in the battle, in the trenches. Coaching is about guiding and leading and shaking things up. In some cases, I mean, my time with Novak was a fun time and a fascinating time, but I realized the best way to have helped him was to really kind of shake his cage in a few areas and poke the bear in a lot of other areas, because you get to learn somebody. When you learn somebody, it's a big responsibility when you're making some of those decisions. And Grigor, who's Dimitrov, who I've helped for the last couple of years, it's like, yeah, tennis is a byproduct in his life. I mean, he's talented and all that, but his heart is deep and he has a desire for growth, for personal growth, and so I've watched him grow up as a man, for 2 years, and I think we'll see some fruits of that as it unfolds. So coaching to me is mentorship and guidance, and in some cases just reassurance. In other cases, really, trajectory altering, decisions. So yeah, I'll always be available. I mean, I assistant coach at UNLV when I have time. For example, I love going down there and working with the boys and just being able to offer them something that makes them better off as people and as players, and so I just, again, that's all about connection, and I enjoy that part. But traveling to go sit in the box and kind of be part of I'd rather be behind the scenes and do what I'm doing and not let anybody know who I'm helping.
All right, another question. What career path would you have chosen if you couldn't play tennis professionally?
Well, see, that's the question that can never truly be answered, because I didn't have the luxury, of education in my life. My father always wanted me to be a tennis player. And so when I think of the things that interest me, the things we've kind of chatted about already, I don't know if I would end up, being a teacher, or I would end up, being a writer, or I would end up, I don't know, selling used cars. I mean, who knows? Life kind of leads you, and when all of a sudden your life is determined and you don't have choice, you never quite know who or what you would have done or been, and for me, that was a big catalyst to me getting involved in education, because I saw so many kids, in these charter schools, and I saw a 60 Minutes piece, KIPP, Knowledge is Power program. And I watched Michael Feinberg, Dave Levin, I watched them roll up their sleeves and educate these children whose parents never even came close to graduating, and he was systemically changing their lives, but with the power of education and the hope that comes in the belief that if I just work hard enough, if I just get the opportunity, if I just get a chance, I can make my life whatever I want it to be. I said, when I started seeing that their option, if they didn't have education, was the little world that they lived in, which sometimes was gang ridden, sometimes it was drug addicted, sometimes it was, you're talking about a devastating alternative, and I know how unhappy I was at times in my own life because I didn't choose tennis. So it really kind of put in perspective for me how important education is in a child's development, because with education comes comes hope, and it comes and comes knowledge, and comes exploration, and I think all those things are so crucial to making yourself the best of who you are.
Andre, can I throw something in here along those lines? You talk about the education and not having the education and the experience and all that. Because I've been thinking about this since you started. Way back when, I forget where we were, and it was early on in your career, and you had, we were talking about the sort of the experience of travel and the experience of seeing the world, and at your the young age then, what that meant to you from an education perspective. Do you still feel like that part of your education or that part of your life, sort of helped make you who you are today by not going to college but seeing the world at a young age?
Yeah. So how I would kind of frame that would be to say that there's no question, just because you're not having a formal education, that you stop learning. I mean, I think we keep learning, we keep growing. But for me, it was a bit of growth through acid bath, right? You just kind of get thrown into the fire, and what comes out on the other side is certainly gold. I mean, it's certainly something that is going to be long lasting. But you're also going to these places with a lack of awareness of history, with a lack of awareness of culture, with a lack of awareness of what places have lived through, and so you kind of come into it with this. I don't know. I mean, I live in Las Vegas, for crying out loud. Never traveled anywhere. Never went to school, and all of a sudden I'm in Paris, and I'm complaining about the food. You know what I mean? It's like, so you bring this judgment to it and this narrow perspective to everything when you don't have the experience of that formal education. So I never really saw it as something that I was benefiting from as it was happening. But in hindsight, looking back and towards sort of the last half of my career, I was really grateful for those opportunities, and it made me realize that I think every environment you're in is an opportunity to learn. If you're willing to pay attention, and sometimes we're asked quietly internally just to pay attention. If something resonates with you one way or another, pay attention, try to understand it. There's never a dumb question to ask. I mean, any question you have deserves to be answered, and you deserve an answer to it. So if I feel like if everybody took that approach towards just their daily engagements, whether they get to travel the world or not, the education is epic.
It's great. Yeah.
I think our last question is, where is your favorite place to travel?
Well, see, that also changes as you realize as you get older. You know, you have what you call seasons in life. You know, and you get to a point where you realize that you're moving into another season of life. You know, and there was a season of life where we had young children, and so destinations to travel to would be based around them and solely them, you know. And before children, you know, it was me and my wife, and we would take a whole different perspective with where we'd like to go. We could go to New York for 3 or 4 days and have the greatest time in the world, but you go there with 2 baby carriages, and you know, you feel a little bit more stressed out, right? So, and then now our kids, you know, one's off to USC. And one is a year away, you know, a year and a half away from being off to school. So we're close to that next season, which I don't know. I don't know where we're gonna go. You know, when I played and when I traveled, I always loved going to Australia. I just found it to be just so understatedly, how would I call it? Understatedly exotic, you know, and the people were so relaxed, and there was this experience combined with this being comfortable that I just really like. Plus I like playing there as well. You know, when our kids were young, we have such memorable trips to Africa and to Costa Rica. And now as our kids are older, if you ask me and stuff where we want to go, you know, we'd want to go probably just up to our home in Idaho, you know, and go for a hike or go do a little snowboarding or something of that nature. But you'll realize as you get older that seasons of life change, and so do your circumstances, and it's all a beautiful journey.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure, guys. So everybody, just thank you for having me here tonight and to be sharing this. I think what you're doing is incredible, and to the Portland Tennis and Education Initiative Foundation, all I can say is congratulations, and I really deserve all the credit in the world for impacting the trajectory of these children's lives. And for all of you out there, I mean, you know, I think the biggest word that I can use for what we're all trying to do here is participation. I mean, I think participating is one of the greatest things we can do in life, and whether that's giving of your resources, or whether that's giving of your time, or listen, with all due respect to our initiatives tonight, you know, participate in something else if you're not going to participate in this. But if you're here and you're going to participate, please give with a spirit of knowing that these lives are truly changing, and I'm grateful for anything you do.